You walk into a room and immediately begin scanning. Not for threats, not for exits. You're scanning faces, reading moods, quietly calculating whether everyone around you is okay. And if someone seems off, quieter than usual, a little tense, distracted, something inside you shifts, a low hum of unease, a subtle pull toward fixing it, even if it has nothing to do with you. You haven't said a word yet, and you're already exhausted. If that sounds familiar, stay here, because what's happening inside you isn't anxiety in the traditional sense. It isn't weakness. It isn't even purely a habit. It's something your brain was trained to do at a level so deep it feels like instinct, and understanding why changes everything. Psychologists call this emotional hypervigilance, and once you understand how it actually works, you stop blaming yourself for it. Emotional hypervigilance is the chronic monitoring of other people's emotional states, combined with a felt sense of responsibility for regulating them. It's not the same as empathy, though the two overlap. Empathy is noticing. Hypervigilance is responding to someone else's feelings as if they were your emergency. It shapes your decisions. It shapes what you say, what you don't say, how you enter conversations, and how you exit them. It shapes who you allow yourself to be around other people, which means it quietly shapes your entire life. And here's what most people miss about it. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like caring. It feels like being a good person. It feels like love. That's what makes it so invisible for so long. Think about a conversation where someone went quiet after something you said. Did you immediately replay the moment, try to decode what you did wrong? Maybe soften your next words, lighten the mood, or apologize for something you weren't even sure you did. Or imagine a dinner where someone at the table is clearly irritated, even if it has nothing to do with you. Even if you know rationally it has nothing to do with you, there's still this low-grade pull to do something, to smooth it over, to make the air feel lighter. You don't choose this. It happens before thought, before intention. It's almost like your nervous system voted and nobody asked your conscious mind. That's not an accident. That's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, based on what it learned very early about what keeps people safe. But here's where it gets harder. The more you absorb other people's emotional states, the less room there is for your own. You become so fluent in reading others that you lose the ability to check in with yourself. What do you feel? What do you need? Those questions start to feel selfish or simply unanswerable. And over time, the people around you, even people who love you, begin to experience your emotional management as something they don't have to do themselves. Without meaning to, you've trained everyone in your life that their discomfort will be handled by you. That's a cost that doesn't show up all at once. It shows up slowly, in fatigue you can't explain, and relationships that feel uneven in ways you can't quite name. One person who lived inside this pattern in a way that history documented carefully was Princess Diana. Diana Spencer moved through one of the most emotionally demanding environments imaginable, the British royal family, with an almost preternatural sensitivity to how the people around her felt. She was documented describing her awareness of every mood in a room, her compulsive need to manage tension, to be the person who made others feel seen. She described in her own words feeling responsible for the happiness of nearly everyone around her. She absorbed the coldness of her marriage. She carried the emotional weight of her children's stability. She became the person the public brought their grief to because she seemed to have an infinite capacity to hold it. What the psychology reveals is this. Diana displayed what trauma researchers call an anxious preoccupied attachment style, combined with high affective empathy, a combination that makes a person exquisitely tuned to the emotional frequencies of others and almost constitutionally incapable of letting distress exist unaddressed. The consequences were real. She reported feeling profoundly lonely, surrounded by people, but rarely truly met. She described her emotional caregiving as something that drained her, even as it defined her public identity. The hidden cost of being everyone's sanctuary is that you rarely get to be anyone's priority. What Diana's experience illustrates isn't tragedy for its own sake. It's a pattern. When a person learns early that their emotional attunement is what earns them safety and connection, that attunement becomes identity. It stops being a tool and starts being a requirement, and the requirement never turns off. What does that mean for you? It means the monitoring, the smoothing, the adjusting. It isn't generosity, not entirely. It's also protection, and that distinction matters. Here's the truth that tends to land uncomfortably. This pattern isn't a character flaw, but it also isn't neutral. You aren't broken for feeling this way. You are operating a very sophisticated piece of emotional software that was installed without your consent during a time in your life when you had no way to evaluate whether it was accurate. Neuroscientists have found that the brain's social monitoring system, sometimes loosely called the default mode network, is dramatically more active in people who grew up in emotionally unpredictable environments. When a child cannot fully predict a caregiver's emotional state, the brain compensates by becoming a prediction machine. It gets very, very good at reading small signals, tone shifts, facial microexpressions, the weight of silence. The metaphor that fits best is a smoke detector installed too sensitively. It was meant to protect you from fire, but now it goes off when someone makes toast. The mechanism is correct, the calibration is off. And here's why that matters developmentally. This usually began as survival. If you grew up in a home where tension was unpredictable, where a parent's mood determined the temperature of the whole house, your nervous system adapted. It learned that if you could sense the shift early enough, you could intervene, manage it, prevent something worse. You weren't people-pleasing, you were problem-solving, with the only tools a child has. That strategy worked for what it was. The problem is that the brain doesn't automatically retire strategies that once kept you safe. It keeps running them, even after you leave the house, even decades later, even in relationships with people who are nothing like the people who raised you. So what do you actually do with this? Not as a cure, because it isn't a disease, but as a recalibration. The first thing is learning to pause between the signal and the response. When you feel that pull, that low hum that says something is wrong and I need to fix it, learn to ask one question before you move. Is this mine? Not accusatory, just curious. Is this feeling actually about something you did, or did you simply pick it up from the room? The brain can be trained to hold that question, but it takes repetition. Every time you pause before absorbing, you're creating a small gap between stimulus and response. Neuroscientists call this the space of agency. It's tiny at first. It grows. The second thing is learning to tolerate someone else's discomfort without interpreting it as your failure. This is the harder skill, because somewhere in your history, those two things got linked. Someone is upset equals you didn't do enough. Separating them is quiet, unglamorous work, but it's the work that changes the pattern. The third thing is redirecting some of that attunement inward. The same sensitivity that makes you fluent in everyone else's emotional state can be turned toward your own. It often requires practice because it feels unfamiliar, almost selfish at first. It isn't. It's balance. Here's the simple model to hold on to. Your nervous system learned to treat other people's feelings as information that required your action. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is to restore the distinction between noticing and being responsible, between empathy and obligation. You can care deeply without carrying everything. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are someone whose mind developed a very precise, very exhausting way of keeping the peace, and you've been doing it so long it stopped feeling like a choice. It can become one again. Not all at once, not through discipline or willpower, through understanding what your brain actually learned and gently, consistently beginning to teach it something new. If this reached something in you, that recognition, that quiet yes, there's more to understand about how your mind works, and it's worth understanding.